right, guys. Hey, it's Jonathan Edwards here. Welcome to another video or an audio, depending on where you are. But listen, a disclaimer, as always, I work with aspiring athletes and their families. These are families who've got big athletic dreams and they're really go for it. My advice is geared towards them. So with that in mind, some of that advice may not rub you the right way if you are not as kind of into it or committed. If you aren't willing to take 100% responsibility for your athletic experience, if you're going to blame coaches, blame the weather, blame something other than yourself, it probably isn't the advice for you. So if you're going to hang out, that's fine. Leave appropriate comments where necessary. But again, just a little disclaimer, this advice isn't for everybody. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Let's get started. Bridging practice to game day. So this kind of ties in a little bit today. A question that I've been getting a little bit this week is because a lot of my athletes are now in their summer events and they're going to showcases where there's like college recruiters and things like that. And so that everybody feels like the pressure is big, and some athletes aren't really dealing with it very well. They're not doing very well, but they do well in practice. So the thing to understand about this is that the biggest disconnect between practice to game day is one, thinking it's a big deal, right? And for athletes who are process focused versus outcome focused, if you're process focused, game day is not that big of a deal, right? It doesn't matter who's in the stands. You're still going out at practice and you're competing as well as you can. And I wish I had really understood this when I was younger, because I still succumb to that. You know, I still succumbed to that when I was young. This idea that oh my God, a game day, I got to turn it on. And I've shared the story, like when I went to the Olympics and we all went to, Oslo, and we landed on the ferry and we landed in Oslo and we went to the SAS hotel and we got all our Olympic team gear, like our coats and our jackets and stuff. It's kind of a cool deal. We're all walking around in underwear. Well, we did it back then. They probably don't do that anymore. But the whole team, boys and girls, we're all walking around in our underwear, trying on clothes. Pretty cool deal. But the truth is that I was nervous then. Like the butterflies were going like right there. But one thing that I didn't fully understand was managing that, how my nervous system was going to be dealing for 2 weeks before my event. And then the morning I woke up for the Olympics, I had nothing. I was dead. I was like completely dead inside. And that was weird. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. I didn't have anybody. I didn't have someone handy that I trusted. That, just the other day, like one of my clients, one of my athletes called me up and goes, "Hey, I'm going to this event tonight and I'm nervous. What's the deal?" And literally just talking for 15 minutes, completely talked that athlete kind of down, and where they understood what was going on, and they went out and they just killed it. They just totally killed it. I was so proud of them. All right. But you got to have somebody like that in your corner. And if you don't, if I can help you, that'd be great. But you got to have somebody who understands what's going on, right, internally. Because you then, as the athlete, the responsibility is that you've got to go to practice and you've got to bridge the gap between what you're doing in practice versus what you're going to do on game day. You've got to visualize, like, so for Emma from Raducanu from the UK, who pulled out of Wimbledon, I doubt she was visualizing, hey, my Instagram account just blew up to 250,000 people and I'm at Wimbledon and it's center court, and she didn't do enough of that, right, in practice. And tennis, I think every event is like this, practice the game day. Like you go from training and then all of a sudden at the Olympics, there's like all these colored banners that are there. And there's, there's cameramen in your face. Depending on your sport, that may be weird, but like if you're a 100-meter track swimmer, you're used to that. But for a lot of athletes, that all of a sudden, they go from, shooting, being an archer in like total seclusion to all of a sudden in front of a ton of fans, right? And that's different. I remember competing on race days where all of a sudden, we went to Oberhof, Eastern Germany. And there's like 32,000 people, or supposedly, for when we were there for World Championships. But during the week, there's like, your coach on the sideline smoking a cigarette. That's the deal. So bridging the gap between practice and game day is really, really important. And I would say a lot of my female athletes that I work with, a lot of the girls are way more conscientious and hardworking, and they, I don't know if it's like a maternal instinct as well, like caring for their teammates or their coaches or their parents or wanting to do well for everybody. I maybe it is like part of that maternal instinct, but the my female athletes tend to have more of that burden than the men do, or the boys do. Okay, and so I want to encourage you to understand that. Listen, those people support you, but they're not supported by you. All right, that's okay. Like if you lose, there that's no big deal. All right, and so you've got to realize that when your parents are driving to all these events, that's okay. That's their choice. That's their choice as adults. It's not if you lose, they're going to love you whether you win or lose. All right, that's really important to understand. But the big disconnect is between athletes just not putting enough pressure on themselves in practice, so that game day feels easy, right? And realizing that on game day is their time to just kind of let loose, right? As opposed to try to turn it up a notch. If you haven't turned it up a notch, if you haven't put it to 11 in practice, you're not going to all of a sudden put it to 11 on game day. Okay. So what many athletes do is they treat practice like a 7, and then they hope on game day they turn it up to 11. Just doesn't work, right? It doesn't work, and physiologically you feel different. Um, the other thing that keeps athletes from succeeding on game day is not paying attention to environment, right? People, places, and things. This is really, really important. I can't stress this enough. Is it going to be hot on game day versus what you've been doing in practice? Like, I, I read this story. This was a couple of years ago of a triathlete who posted, on some Reddit forum, disappointed on their event in Kona. They went to Kona, Hawaii, for the 7.3, not World Championships. The 7.3 happens I can't remember what month it happens in. I think it's February, right? But they've been training indoors because they live in like a northern climate, and I think they were actually in Alberta, where it's damn cold. And so they're training in an air conditioned climate, no heaters, no nothing, and they go to Hawaii where it's hot, and they had a bad event. Why? Because their body wasn't adapted. Duh, right? People is another one. Um, you know, some athletes perform, like if you think of like Premier League soccer players who come from you know African nations, and then all of a sudden they get to England and they're playing for a team in England, and they're getting like abused. They're getting racist comments from the stands. They may have been told about it, but when they're finally actually out in that situation, I can only imagine for some of them what a change in just what an a possibly like unique situation, just crazy. But what that athlete needs to do is they need to get a video or audio from the pitch out, right? Seeing the stands and hearing those racial slurs being commented and being able to operate within that situation, right? That's the deal. And that sounds weird and it sounds strange, but it's really what needs to happen, right? And so when you take that responsibility, that level of responsibility, then game day it's no problem for game day. All right. So I want you to keep that in mind. I want you to understand that that's what you're doing, that you've got to basically make practice feel like game day so that you can go out to game day and nothing is new. You've been there before, right? So for Emma Raducanu, who pulled out of Wimbledon, unfortunately, there was not enough time spent dealing like, okay, this is what happens when your breathing goes up, and this is what happens when you feel lightheaded, and this is what you do to get it down, right? Her team let her down. Now, and as an athlete, now she takes 100% responsibility, right? We would have liked to have gotten ahead of that, and unfortunately, people didn't help her enough with that. But now from there, she takes that and goes, all right, 100% responsibility. This is what I got to do between now and next year so that I can survive. And I'm sure next year it won't even be a problem because she has been through it before, right? And there's some things you can't. I don't want to say can't, because you can predict worst case scenarios, like Sha'Carri Richardson. What happens if you get a message that your mother died, right? How would you deal with that? right? Oh, that's not going to happen. Well, what if it did? Let's just play that game. Well, I guess I would do this and do this and do this. All right. That's what needs to happen here. All right. So I want your athlete to understand that you can always do a little bit more, and you can always take your game day experiences and bring them to practice. And you want to be creative. Like, you want to be messing around. A lot of people think like practice is a grind. Practice isn't a grind. Practice is a creative endeavor. You are taking your skills that you're working. Like, if you feel like you're just grinding out doing reps, you're completely missing the point. You want to basically mentally wrap your head around, okay, I'm doing this in that environment, not here right now in practice, not in the backyard shooting on a net, not, working on an empty hockey rink shooting pucks. No, it's like, I'm in the Stanley Cup final, or maybe not the Stanley Cup final, because sometimes that can be a big jump for an athlete. It's the next thing for them. It's the tryout that they have coming up. It's the recruiting event they have in front of a bunch of college coaches, right? Or it's the Olympics, or it's the Olympic trials, whatever it is, right? Sometimes if you're just thinking about the Olympics, but you haven't mastered Olympic trials yet, well, you're not going to get to the Olympics. So it's your next big game day. That's what you want to focus on, and that's what's most important. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. So listen, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you being here. It's as always, I hope you're having a great summer, and that your athlete's doing great. If I can help you, if you want to book a call me, athletespecific.com/call. Stay tuned for Mental Performance School, which we are hoping to launch soon. It's a way bigger project than I imagined, but we're excited to that as well. So stay tuned. And as always, if you want to reach out to me, shoot me an email, coachedwards@athletespecific.com. See you next week. Bye.